Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind Season 6, the wedding episodes. Let's see what happens.
For richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, for all of your days.
I do.
Yeah, it's not very surprising given everything else we saw, but, you never know. Looking at the survey that I sent out after the 6th episode, I asked everyone if they thought that AD would be a yes or a no. Most people didn't answer either question or didn't indicate either, so I think most people didn't really know. But it is notable that only about 15% of you said that she was going to be a yes at the altar, and about the same said she was going to be a no. I don't know what that says, but just thought that was interesting. And then also, what did I predict? I wrote that down too. Well, I was just predicting the relationship. So so after the pods, so that would have been after, I don't know, episode 3 or 4 or something, I was predicting that they weren't going to work out. I'm pretty sure I was at least thinking that he was going to be a no. So let's find out. Well, I'm guessing you already know. But what y'all said back after episode 6 was about 10% said that he's going to be a yes, and maybe about 22%-ish said that he was going to be a no. So again, most people didn't really know what either one of them was going to say back then. Let's watch and see what he says. I'm going to take a guess and say, I don't know. He is hard to... everything's pointing towards no, because he doesn't talk like someone who would be a yes. I mean, when you hear Johnny or, Brett from season 4, or Zach, or who was last season? Milton. It's just a different set of things. But I could see him saying yes. I could see him saying, and even inspired by the moment, I think he is kind of swayable in that way. I don't know. And that could really say, oh, that's bad that he would be on the fence and then say yes. You want to be totally in it. But if he continues to make healthy choices, it could be better for both of them. Ideally, though, you'd want him to be fully on board for a long time before he says yes at the altar. That's typically what happens. But anyway, let's see what he says.
This has been the best process. AD, I love you. I don't think it's...
Oh, I just want to say, usually when there's these kinds of caveats, you're like, oh, this is a no. But sometimes they've done a misdirection and then the person says yes. But is he about to say, I don't? Let's rewind.
This has been the best process. AD, I love you. I don't think it's responsible for me to say I do.
I could still see him saying I do, though. I could still see him saying, but screw it. I do. I want to marry. Yeah, I don't. I could see. I don't know. Y'all know what happened. I don't. That's why I'm in this ridiculous getup. Let's watch.
But I want you to know that I'm rocking with you. I just don't think it's responsible for me to say I do at this point when I still need work. I still need to get to the point where I'm 100% in.
Yeah. And I don't know. I would hope that he wouldn't see it that way entirely anyway, that he needs work in order to be convinced to marry her. I mean, maybe it is that way. Maybe there are internal psychological trauma barriers that are preventing him from living the life that he wants, which is to be with AD. But I think it's also possible that even if he did do a lot of healing and work and growth and development, that he still might not be into AD. So the way that I would frame it, given what he's saying, is who knows who Clay really is and who Clay is attracted to, really. Who knows? Maybe that's AD. Maybe it's an entirely different person. It likely is an entirely different person. So go down that journey, do that work, and then start making decisions that are based on what you believe to be things that are things that you want for the rest of your life. I worded that really weird. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm not going to have you over here thinking that it's not going to work. I'm going to put the work in for you, and we'll go through this together. I don't care what nobody says. I know fully I'm not ready for marriage, and you deserve the best.
Sounds like he's saying, let's date. I could see them doing that. Have we seen anybody do that and stay together? No one's coming to mind, right? There were situations where it looked like it could happen, like with Izzy and Stacy, the way they were talking at the wedding. I remember thinking, why not? At least that's my memory. There were others that seemed to be thinking that maybe they would do that. Oh, SK and Raven, right? That was a disaster. Not too long ago, I was talking about comparing Jeremy to people in the past, and at least Jeremy's presentation, I said something like, I don't think we've ever seen anyone that has been this callous. The person I forgot was SK, based on what came out after the show was over. I don't remember all the details, but I think there were allegations that SK during season 3 was involved with at least another woman, if not more than that, while he was with Raven, maybe even during the show. And that one was really a curveball because SK just seemed like the nicest, like wholesomest guy ever. So it just goes to show you can't really tell. So while I'm on this topic, I'm sorry to get away from this, but I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk about this again regarding Laura and Jeremy. I talked with my contact on the show, and she gave me a lot of information about them that I wanted to share with you. It's just this individual's account. It could be all fabricated or misunderstood. So take all this with a grain of salt, of course, but I tend to believe that a lot of this is at least accurate from her point of view for whatever that's worth to you. So what she was telling me about Jeremy is that, because I was asking her, do you have any more data on Jeremy? Because I was kind of landing on a conceptualization that he lacked empathy in general. And I don't like that conceptualization because that is one I see a lot of people jumping to on limited information. But what we were seeing Jeremy do, even if we believe the story that he and Sarah didn't get together, the way he told Laura the next day, like he just thought, what's the big deal? Yeah. Oh yeah. I was with the person that I almost chose instead of you. And she is kind of after me. And I spent all night in an alleyway with her. And then I drove her home. Why are you so upset? Like you're such a mean person or something. I'm just like, what? And then at the lake party, he's like, she's making me out to be the bad guy. I'm thinking, where is this guy coming from? Is he trolling? I hope he's trolling because maybe he has empathy and he's just doing an act. I was like, wow, I don't think we've seen this much of a callous set of behaviors. So I was like, any more information on Jeremy? Because if there was more callousness and more indication of a general lack of empathy, I would not diagnose from afar. But then I'd say, well, I guess I just have to concede that this is one of those rare examples where we actually see evidence that someone might actually have a personality disorder related to lacking empathy entirely, like psychopathy, antisocial. Or with more information, it would be fleshed out in a way that I would understand where it's coming from, which is usually the case, by the way. So, long story short, it's the second one, which is a little relieving to me, mostly because it's one less psychopath in the world that I have to worry about others. Jeremy wouldn't ever harm me, but generally speaking, people with antisocial personality disorder can cause a fair amount of destruction around them. Anyway, so reading what my contact was telling me regarding the woman that has come forward regarding Jeremy. I think I talked about this in a previous video, that there were reports that a woman came forward saying that he was with someone else the whole time and did not go on the show in a sincere manner. His ex-fiancee's mother, so I don't know if I knew that, but anyway, so his former fiancee, her mother, actually outed him on social media that he was still engaged while applying for the show. So at first glance, you would say, well, there you go. But what my context is granted, sometimes the initial application happens a long time before filming. So he could have been engaged, but had decided he didn't want to be engaged anymore, but had yet to actually break up. People do that sometimes. I mean, this is just speculative, of course, but if we're going with trying to make him more human and less psychopathic, then he could be engaged, or him and his fiancée had decided, look, this looks like it might be over, and it had been that way for a while. Who knows? He starts to apply to be on the show because he thinks of himself as basically single, and then they break up at a later point, and maybe the relationship ended with his ex-fiancée, a few months before going on the show, but the relationship really ended a long time before. We don't know. That's giving him a lot of charity. There's another possibility that he was engaged and applied to be on a reality TV show. Even if he was a psychopath, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because what's the con? Exactly. What's going on there? Long story short, my hypothesis is that he avoids pathologically and might even be like a worm with a mustache, Tom Sandoval, in that he might have some passive-aggressive traits. The core trauma for these, there's not a lot of evidence, of course, but there are some minor indications that I'll get into in a second regarding Jeremy that feel very satisfying, at least to have something to hold on to regarding an hypothesis that makes more sense to me than just saying he's a psychopath, Not that that isn't a viable conceptualization, but not for Jeremy, but for people in general. Anyway, that the core trauma for these individuals, and I don't know if Tom suffers from it, I don't know if Jeremy does, but there's some signs that would warrant an assessment of that hypothesis, that the core trauma is being made to feel by one's caregivers when you're young, or someone that's an authority over you, that you are being treated unfairly and in an aggressive, hurtful way, such that as a child, you feel like this is unfair, what's happening to me, and I cannot express my anger because it will be, seen as a threat or something, and I will be punished even more. So I have to suppress my anger, but I am very, very angry, and I deserve to express my anger, so I'm going to express it in a hidden way, in a passive way. That's what passive-aggressive means. So hidden hostility. I'm going to be hostile in a hidden way because I need to express it. I also need justice. That person that's harming me deserves me to get back at them. But if I do it directly, I will be harmed even more. So I have to hide it very, very well, maybe even hide it from my conscious mind. So with Tom Sandoval, I was hypothesizing that he operates from that place. He talks a lot in that way, and that's why from the outside you would say, what? Why is it that you believe that the infidelity was completely justified based on almost no rational, even what you're telling us? If you're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, you'd think Tom would come up with better justifications. The things that are coming out of his mouth, like she wore a t-shirt during sex, to him, because he sees the world through that lens of, I am being treated unfairly and I cannot be angry, which could be generally a caution against being assertive or just saying anything, of feedback, like, I don't like this situation. So they don't indicate at all directly. There's no indication. There's not even a sign that they're upset. Meanwhile, they're rageful and hurt, and they will do things like have an affair to get back at the person subconsciously. So for Jeremy, it's possible, if this is, who knows, but we have more data on Tom than on Jeremy. But, Jeremy's, like when Jeremy was being interviewed at the Lake thing, and he's like, I'm being made out to be the bad guy. How is that happening? Similar to Tom Sandoval. If he was truly trying to trick the audience or people around him, they would put more effort into tricking there's like no effort from Tom Sandoval or Jeremy to trick anybody. It's just happening, and we're watching it. It's edited, God knows, but we're hearing other people react to it, and we're hearing from someone behind the scenes that saw it. And the individual, they don't feel like they have to change the story, because to them, they are being treated unfairly, and they know, and everyone else should know, obviously, they're not to blame. The other person is to blame. They're being treated hard. And it's a similar dynamic, right? That Jeremy and Laura had a similar stated dynamic of, the Laura and the Ariana are critical and harsh, both of them, and maybe sniffing them out as a way to have a better chance of having that. That's the thing about this disorder, is that they will often sniff out someone who will treat them a little unfairly, and they'll provoke them to treat them unfairly. So there's that, similar to how someone with borderline will choose people that might be a little bit more abandoning, or maybe very abandoning, maybe very abusive, potentially. Anyway, so going on with what she's telling me here. But here's what I know about the situation. We actually knew that Jeremy ended an engagement, according to Jeremy. So Jeremy told production or people he was dating, or both. We actually knew that Jeremy ended an engagement less than a year before filming began, and that his former fiancée continued to live with him for a while after they broke up. That's in quotes. So Jeremy was saying, she lived with me for a while after we broke up. That could be innocent. It could be problematic. I'll take a guess and say that it's innocent. Going on, she says, I was under the impression of 6 or more months, meaning that, they were no longer living together 6 or more months in the past. Laura also knew this. So Laura knew about this previous relationship because Jeremy disclosed it. That would be the only way that Laura would know. He also told her that ex was breaking into their former home together. So this is interesting. We don't know if that was even said. We don't know if Jeremy was being honest or whatever. There's just a lot of, someone is telling me, I'm telling you something that someone told me that Jeremy said that this person is claiming to have heard. This isn't journalism. This is just data. And as a therapist, sometimes you have to take what you can get. Not that you go with it, but you just couch it within that, and you don't reject it entirely, right? But this fits in within my hypothesis, or I should say it could fit, in that if he sniffs out people that are dominant, and he has a tendency to, I don't know if underfunctioning is quite the word, but it can be like that, and to act like a child, to provoke people to be above him, to criticize him, and to see him as inept, that kind of thing. There seems to be that kind of dynamic. The joking around, the childishness, the immaturity. And then it's possible that his fiancée was in a similar vein to, I guess, Ariana, but Laura, in that there was some tendency for criticism or, dominance-ish, or being harsh. Maybe that's a more general word. Now, some of you might not agree that Ariana was harsh. I don't know. Given what Tom was saying, I can see how a lot of people would just disregard everything that he says. But I think that it's possible that there is some truth to that. And I think some people have told me that, because I didn't watch the whole show, that there is some evidence that Ariana's kind of like that. But anyway, so, I'm speculating on speculation, but if the former fiancé was like that, she might have been particularly like that and might have become more exaggeratedly like that. And if he did a bigger version to his fiancée that he did to Laura by basically just ghosting and avoiding breaking up, you could imagine someone being very, very angry and hostile with him and might take action that might be characterized as breaking into, it sounds like they lived together, she moved out and broke in. There's also a possibility, which I would hear a lot of, where they would have a lot of fighting and there would be, possessions in the house that were not divvied up sufficiently, and the woman leaves because she's just like, I got to get out of here. And then at some point she's like, hey, I need that thing. Hey, I need that thing. And he's playing games. And then she gets her family and they come over and they knock on the door and they kind of, not force, but they're like, hey, we're going to come in and get this stuff. They go in, they get the stuff, and they walk out. And he's like, oh, they broke in the house. You know, I don't know. But it's just kind of interesting to hear at least chaos in his history that he disclosed. Now, maybe his ex-fiancée is an abusive, horrible human being and Jeremy did nothing wrong. I don't know. But anyway, so going on, when Laura says in their breakup that maybe he's just Mr. Nice Guy, remember that she said that during the lake party? He's just being Mr. Nice Guy that doesn't know how to shut the door completely. She was actually talking about his ex-fiancée, not herself, although it could be applied there. That's interesting. So it's possible that he has a pattern of sniffing out assertive / aggressive / what was the word I said earlier? Harsh partners. And when there's tension, he avoids either by joking or by just running away. You know, we could see that happening because he believes that there's no pathway to working it out with the person. You know, that he talks like that, like at the lake party, he kind of talked along those lines. And so given the traumas that he went through as a child, he just doesn't, he's just like, that's unworkable. There's no way to work that out. So I'm either going to run away in my mind or physically, or I'm going to joke and try to please or annoy. That could be another passive aggression is through joking, right? So there's tension and he avoids, doesn't indicate directly, which leads to more hostility from the partner, right? I think we kind of saw that with Laura as well, which leads to him being more avoidant. We could argue that very first party where the bean dip thing happened, we could say that him outing Laura was a passive aggression, or he was seeking support or something, I don't know. So the Lauras and the fiance get more hostile, more harsh. He avoids more, which eventually leads to him essentially ghosting the person the way that we saw him ghost Laura. He didn't ghost technically, but he just disappeared. And then when he came back home and tells Laura what happened, he's just like, yeah, that's what happened. So imagine that times 100, because if you're engaged to someone and living with them, you would imagine that would be much more hurtful and the avoidance could be much more protracted. I'm just speculating, of course. And then that ghosting leads to even more extreme anger, like maybe breaking into the house, or what we saw Laura do at the party, or sounded like over text or something. And this all makes sense to me. This would explain the flippant attitude. This would explain the ghosting. It would explain his, I don't know if we want to call it infidelity, but it's definitely in that direction. Even if he didn't get together with Sarah, which a lot of people don't believe, but even if he didn't, it is kind of, in a sense, it's unfaithful. It's, at the very least, it's very uncaring. Like I said, when it happened, if he had come home and said, I'm so sorry, I was with Sarah and you were sleeping and I really wanted to talk with her and I didn't do anything with her and we were in my car because the barge closed down, so I didn't know where to go. And I just felt really bad. I wanted to talk with her and I know this looks bad and I'm so sorry. And as the hours or the minutes were going by, I kept thinking, uh-oh, I'm here. I thought it was just going to be for like 15 minutes, but felt like it was important to talk with her in that moment. And to be truthful, maybe I was second guessing the choice. I'm sorry, I don't know. But I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that, or I should have called you, or I should have really thought about my feelings before I even saw her that night. I don't know. He could have said something like that. It still would have been potentially a transgression, right? But at least it would show some caring. There was none of that. He was just like sunglasses on, looking at his phone like all the other dudes except for him. and Jeremy just was like, yeah. And then Laura gets upset in a fairly balanced way, understandable way. It wasn't like she was abusive or anything. And she reacts. And then later he's like, yeah, everyone's making me out to be the bad guy. Uh-huh. So if he believes that he's being imposed upon and treated unfairly, baseline, regardless of what his close attachments are doing to him, then that's the filter. And that, that passive aggression, that hidden hostility happening. And then he goes to meet up with his mom, and the mom is like, what happened? And that kind of like avoidant blankness and seemingly no emotion about it, no remorse about it, because he could have been for weeks now building up this very strong sense that he is being treated very, very harshly and unfairly, because that's the lens he looks through, because that's what he went through growing up. And therefore, any love had been snuffed out, any attraction, any sort of motivation. And in his mind, he's like, well, yeah, the relationship's over, because it would be for anybody if you're treated like that. Yeah, I don't have any emotion about it because of that, or something like that. So I don't know. That's pretty, there's a lot of speculation in there, but it feels a lot more satisfying than just thinking that he's a callous individual with no emotion, or not emotion, but no empathy. Going on with this bit, she says, a day or two before the big fight happened, Laura found out Jeremy never deleted his dating profiles before the pods or even after he got home engaged. He claimed he just forgot, but who knows? That happens. People will forget to close, or, you can imagine that happening. They go into the Love is Blind pods, even still knowing that they're on the dating things. And then once they're out, their mind is swimming. They don't get their phone back until pretty late in the game, and they just forget to log out or to close the account or whatever. That could happen. But it could also be an indication of something else is happening. Who knows? Okay, there's another interesting detail here. She says, I heard that they filmed a scene after the breakup and before the lake party. So you had the breakup, the Sarah event, and then there's some time, and then the lake party. They filmed a scene in there where Laura and Jeremy had dinner together. It started out terribly with them fighting a lot. Then it softened, and Jeremy apologized, and they attempted to continue pursuing things. But then later, on a different day, they had a fight over texts, and that's what they were referring to at the lake party regarding the address and the party and the flowers and everything. So that's interesting. I could see why they would cut that out, because it's just like, well, let's just cut to the chase. They basically broke up. My wife asked today, she's like, how does your contact feel about telling you and knowing that you're going to blab it on the internet? Doesn't your contact, don't they worry about being fired or something? And I did talk with my contact like a year ago about this, and what I figured was that there's an NDA or something. She could be sued or fired at least. And what she told me was, from my memory anyway, that they don't really have that kind of culture with Kinetic, that there's sort of an expectation that you're going to do what's best for the show, and we're not going to, as the management, threaten you. We're going to work together as a team. And so that goodwill hopefully will carry the day. I think I've never been in that position, but I can imagine that being a better strategy than being draconian about it, because if you're draconian about it, then you're not really creating goodwill or trust. We understand this sociologically, psychologically, and relationally, that like for parenting, if you control everything and threaten your kids, if you don't go to school, I'm going to punish you for so many months, or if you ever lie to me, I'm going to get you. You might get pseudo-compliance, but the person doesn't really want to comply because there's a lot of hurt or anger, and it could increase the amount of non-compliance. Or if they do non-comply, they might really non-comply, right? Whereas if you work with people and there's goodwill and you're saying, hey, let's all be on the same team here. I wouldn't like it if you did X, Y, and Z. And everyone wins if we do X, Y, and Z, because we win as Kinetic, but you win as an employee because you get a benefit from the show being, because if you out us or make us look bad, then people won't want to watch the show anymore. And so let's all work together on this. Then in addition to a lot of other things, it just creates a culture of cooperation and goodwill, right? So there's that. And by the way, my contact doesn't ever spoil any. I tell her don't spoil anything for me. Pretty much whenever I watch a batch of episodes, I immediately email her a bunch of questions, and she likes this show too, and she likes these people, and so she has, she's got a lot of thoughts about everything. And she experienced this a year ago, and so for her to remember all this stuff, indicates how important it is to her. But anyway, so I don't know. Maybe it's all this. There's always a few people in the audience that will think that this individual is manipulating me. It's possible. And if that's true, then wow, what a long con that is. But, it doesn't seem that way to me. I can never know, but it doesn't look that way to me. And I think if you were there during the conversations, you would not think that was highly likely. Just a couple other things while I sort of finish this out. I asked about Kenneth and Brittany, and I was wondering if they seemed motivated or not. And what she tells me here is they seemed to not be fully committed to the experiment in general. They were very rarely physically affectionate, not just sexually, but affectionate at all. Their producers thought they seemed more like friends than engaged to each other. Ken checked out completely when he returned home from the getaways. And then I don't want to go into this part, but I feel like it might be necessary because there's already a lot being said online, I think, that people are thinking that Ken is gay, closeted, and might have gone on the show to prove to his parents that he's straight, but then once faced with actually having to act the part, he couldn't. Usually when I hear those kinds of rumors, I just think, wow, can't someone just have some awkwardness or not be super handsy? That certainly doesn't mean they're gay. Could be they're gay, doesn't, or bisexual, there's that too. So I usually just write it off. But apparently a cousin of Ken's has said on social media, claiming to be Ken's cousin, that Ken is in fact gay. The only thing I'll say about any of that is that I have no idea, and neither does my contact. It's only based on rumor and claim and this sort of thing. And it's terrible to out somebody if they don't want to be outed. On the other hand, you just think, well, why would you go on this show? You didn't have to. There's other ways of trying to mask, I suppose, or pass. But it could explain a couple things. But the topic sentence here is that we still live in a society where someone feels like they need to closet themselves in that way, if this is even close to being true. That's the tragedy, that we live in a society that makes people do something like that, whether Ken did that or not. And we live in a society that will indoctrinate parents and family members into thinking along those lines and threaten to disown, or at least you have kids that are worried their parents are going to disown them if they are who they are. It just makes me so sad. Having said all that, there's a pretty high chance that all of this is just rumor and claim. So I guess what I would say is, if you ever hear those kind of rumors about Ken or anyone else, just proceed with caution and take care, because, there are individuals who, if they are outed, it's a matter of life and death. So it's not a joking matter. People don't go into the closet or stay in the closet for funsies. It's a real danger for some people, even in the United States, of course. Also, we don't want to just label somebody against how they are identifying. Ken identifies as a straight man. We don't want to just willy-nilly say, well, I heard he's gay and he looks gay, so he's gay. That's stupid. So we just have zero idea about anything other than the rumors and the claim by this person. So, we'll just all take care of that. And while I'm yammering, if you're still watching, I might as well just finish off my notes about what my contact was telling me. I'm guessing for some of you are just like, I don't care about any of this. I do. I think it's fascinating. I asked my contact if production, I was watching the lake party, and I stopped and emailed her and said, do the producers determine who enters the party? Because, you have all the main players, and then one by one, the randos start showing up, the Jesses and the Trevors and the Sarahs. And I'm thinking, well, what's the chance that all the main cast shows it? Because it always happens that way. I remember in season 2, I think, when Shayna showed up later, and it's always, the music and the drama. And so I'm thinking, are all the randos just waiting in a van nearby? Or do they tell the randos, drive to the house at this time? It just seems sort of comical to me to think about. And what my contact said is, production does do that. The cast members are absolutely chosen on purpose as to who is going to arrive and when. And they mainly pick the love triangle folks, right? Because there's a lot of people that could come, because a lot of people bonded. Like we saw Mackenzie show, which makes me wonder if Mackenzie was part of a love triangle that they just edited out, because she was around a few times, or at least then, but who knows. But going on, she says, some cast members were even on standby in vans at the location, and they were never brought in because there was enough drama already going on. So some poor sucker got all gussied up and ready for drama, some other, love triangle person. I'm trying to think who that would have been. Was it Matthew? My goodness, was it Matthew? Or Amber? That would have been interesting. Because the only people we saw were Jessica, Trevor, and Sarah, right? They were there. Oh, and Jeremy showed up, right? He was not love triangle. Well, I guess in a way, yeah. But anyway, we didn't see Brittany or Kenneth show up. Were they in the van waiting to come out? So to think that, and what she's telling me is plural. Some cast members were even on standby in vans and never brought in because they had enough drama already going on. So it's fascinating to me. And that, according to my contact, they cap the drama at a certain point. They're like, okay, we have enough drama. We don't need more drama. Other shows would not do that, I think. They would say, there's never enough drama. Keep throwing, get Matthew in there, get Amber in there, get, everybody. So I think that's interesting. And then what she says is that the entrance orders are involved in every ensemble scene, whether it's the dress fitting or the tux fitting or the other things. So it's all carefully choreographed as to who shows up and when, which makes me wonder that one scene with AD and Jeremy, or AD and Clay and AD's mom, Clay arrives late and then he leaves early and then he comes back, remember? Was that all engineered? It kind of had that look to it. Maybe as a way of summarizing that he's absent a lot. I don't know. Or he just had to go to the bathroom and he was a little late. Who knows? Also, what she says is, to be clear, that's probably the most drama directing that we do during the whole process. Otherwise, we leave them on their own. We leave them to their own devices, and they'll stir up drama on their own. So she's saying, yeah, we do a little bit of engineering regarding that, but generally speaking, we just let it happen. And it does have that look to it, because there are other shows where it just looks like the hands of the producers are all over the people, like in 90 Day Fiancé or Darcy and Stacey, particularly that last season. This show looks more like they just put people in the situation. Is there editing? Yeah, but they just kind of let it happen, which I appreciate. The last thing I'll say is about Trevor. So I asked about any more information about Trevor, and what she tells me is that, yeah, Trevor, I'll just summarize, it was what she says is that Trevor was a doozy because no one expected Trevor to be insincere. They all were shocked because they thought Trevor was one of the most genuine, believable people on the show. But then they found out, or news broke, that he had a girlfriend the entire time. Now, there's some potential ambiguity there. Okay, well, I'm sorry for going. I find all that to be fascinating, and I didn't know when I was going to be able to talk about Jeremy and Laura, because we're going to see him again. And a lot of these wedding episodes, it's just a lot of fluff. So, but there's, been some stuff. All right, let's get back to the show. But this episode probably ends right here, so I'll just say, have a good day and take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.